Good morning. It is so good to be here. I am Brennan Gould, President and CEO of the Community Foundation, and I just have to say, man, I have been looking forward to this event. It is such a joy and a delight to be in community with you all, and just the energy and the enthusiasm to be together with fellow change makers in our region. Um, I first wanted to start by thanking the center for hosting us today. Such a lovely space, and just the great partnership that they've had in helping us host today. So I just want to say thank you to the center. And as some of you have heard, we've been navigating some shifting, challenges this morning. And I was thinking, man, if there is any group of people that can adapt to a changing landscape, it is y'all. So thank you just for working through this morning. The water is on, the restrooms are available. If you bought your coffee before the coffee arrived, please contact us. We will take you to coffee at the foundation. So just thank you so much for your grace this morning as we just get settled and get started. I am so thrilled to be together. It really has been about 3 years since we've had this event, our annual foundation grants update in person. This is being recorded, so for colleagues and friends who couldn't be here today, there will be a recording of the event that we'll send out after the program today. But one of the things that we've been doing in the last 3 years is partnering with many of you to navigate just unprecedented challenges in our region and our community. We've also been spending a lot of time listening and looking at data and really understanding some of the nuances of our region, of the people who live here, as well as some of the opportunities and unique challenges that we're navigating. You're going to hear some more of that about that in the program today. We've also been doing a lot of self-reflection and thinking about our strategy as an organization and the ways in which we can be an impactful partner to you all in really realizing transformative and lasting change in the region. Some of the pillars that have been centering our work, and you're going to hear the kind of themes of this throughout the presentation today. One of them is around deep and authentic partnerships and relationships, really centered in being present and proximate and good partners to all of our constituents, to our various neighbors and community members who call this place home. We've also are very committed to catalytic resources and really thinking about the unique ways in which we can deploy support, both monetary and non-monetary, that is meaningful, that's impactful, and that really aligns with the kinds of needs that our partners need. And also really being an influential leader, again, in partnership with so many of you to use all of the tools that we as a community foundation have uniquely available to us to really be able to enhance and strengthen impact in the region. And then finally, to be a strong enterprise, like many of you, think about how we can sustain the good work and the evolving work that we have before us. One of the things that is just a total joy for me is that I get to work with some really amazing people who are passionate and thoughtful and wake up every day wanting to make a difference in our region. So I have the pleasure of introducing our team. So we have a lot of new faces. We have some other faces that are very familiar. And so I want to take a moment to just to introduce our team. Before I do that, I do want to acknowledge we have a few board members here today, and I'm going to ask you all to stand up and wave to the crowd. So all of the Community Foundation board members, Bethany Teachman here, Ray Mishler in the back, Judge Downer here as well, and Jake Zarnagar up front. We're so glad to have you here today. Thank you. I'm going to talk through our team. Our first team is our programs team. This is the group that is leading much of our programmatic work as well as our community investment. It's led by Ebony Bugg, who many of you all know, and I'm sure many of you all have also interacted with other members of the team, Alex Gross, Justin Reed, and Megan Donovan. They are thrilled to be in partnership with you all and connected with you all and make up our programs team. If you all can wave. Yep, so everybody can see you. Thanks, and Megan here in the front. Great. Another team is our advancement team. We're so thrilled. Terrell White has joined our team as our Director of Advancement. Yes, and he works very closely with Katie Kling and Chiquita Venable, who are stewarding our many, many relationships with fund holders and supporting their philanthropic work. So if you all can raise your hand and wave to the crowd, there we are. We also have our finance team. Many of you all may not interact directly with them, but they are touching a lot of the generosity that you're receiving. Our finance team is led by, soon to join our team, Vivi Rogers as our Director of Finance. She'll be joining in October. Maggie McCann, and as well as Valerie Martin, have been stewarding our financial practice over the last few years, and we're really excited to introduce our finance team. If you all can wave to the group here, there we are. Good. We have an operations team. Again, many of you all may not interact as much with them, but they are doing incredible work, often in the background. The team is led by Ryan Jacoby. Andy Sinatro and Carrie Subra are also supporting the work of our operations to ensure a strong organization and support to all of our teams. If you all can wave, there they are. And we're really pleased to add communications capacity to our team. Jamana Al-Talal has joined our team as our Senior Communications Manager, and we're really pleased to have her on board as well. Jamana, if you can wave. There she is. We are growing as well. We are going to be recruiting 2 additional positions. You will hear about some of that in the presentation today. A senior programs manager who will be leading our capacity building work, and also a database and technology manager, 2 roles that we're really eager to bring on board as well. But we are just thrilled as a group to be able to work together to serve you all. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. She also is a familiar face. Ayanna Strawn, who worked with us at the Community Foundation, relocated but continues to work with us as a consultant, a philanthropic programs consultant who's been leading some special projects for us. She's going to share more about some of the work that she's been doing, investigating our region and collecting data and sharing out some of what she's learned. Ayanna.
Yes, thank you so much, Brennan, for that warm introduction. And it's so good to be back in Charlottesville and see so many familiar faces. I do have quite a bit of information, so I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. So what I'm going to present to you all today is a regional dashboard. So as the Community Foundation launches new programs that are responsive to the needs, ideas, and desires of the community, we're looking to regional data to drive the program design. And this data exploration process is shaped by feedback from grant partners. So in 2022, Community Foundation staff interviewed Enriching Communities grant recipients and found that grant partners expressed a desire for the foundation to be a convener for peer learning in order to foster a better understanding of their community's ecosystem. And some of the greatest lessons that influenced their work was around centering those most impacted by our region's challenges. And when asked how their work has progressed since the grant started, many stated that they sought a refinement in their program model to increase innovative, diverse, equitable and inclusive approaches. And so this is going to take a very high-level exploration of data from each of the localities in the Community Foundation Service area, which includes the city of Charlottesville and the counties of Albemarle, Greene, Nelson, Louisa, Fluvanna, Buckingham, and Orange. So we're starting with national and regional sources, including the latest 5-year American Community Survey, the 2023 County Health Rankings and Roadmap, the 2022 Map to Health Report, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, also the Black Progress Index, which is a project led by the NAACP and the Brookings Institute, and also Data Commons. And so data dashboards are really used for exploratory purposes, less so explanatory, because data is always changing, right? It's always being updated. And so the purpose of this portion is not necessarily to explain the causes of our community's conditions, but rather to set the stage for the next inflection points in the Foundation's conversation with community and how we all live, move, and have our being in this place. And it's important to recognize that our understanding of impact and our understanding of what equity and justice can look like continues to evolve. Consequently, what to look for and how to measure it does too. So this means that previous measures will be insufficient again and again as our learning of what's possible in an equitable world deepens. And that is a direct quote from Nonprofit Quarterly's Measuring is an Act of Power, a call for pro-Black measurement and evaluation. So first, the County Health Rankings and Roadmap ranked 133 counties in Virginia according to a variety of health measures for the purpose of illustrating how where we live affects how well and how long we live. So as we can see here, the healthiest counties are Albemarle, also the city of Charlottesville, followed by Greene, Fluvanna, Nelson, Orange, Louisa, and Buckingham. So when we talk about creating a region where everyone can thrive, these measures are ways to help us understand the conditions by which folks are living and how particular interventions may help us contribute to healthier outcomes. So the following slides will take a very brief look, county by county, for each locality within the Community Foundation service area to see what are these inflection points across the region and where do economic and social conditions, the physical environment, and access to health and clinical care look like. While this is a brief dive, the Foundation will release a fuller report at a later date. So with that said, we'll start with Albemarle County. When we look across the region, households in Albemarle have some of the highest median household incomes, followed by Fluvanna and Orange counties. A median household income is simply an average of the income where half of the households in a county earn more and half of the households earn less. And when we examine this by race, we see that Asian and white households have significantly higher incomes in Albemarle when compared to Black and American Indian and Alaska Native households. And this terminology and language for these groups are taken directly from that data source. And though Albemarle has some of the highest household incomes, it is fourth highest in households experiencing severe housing cost burden, which means that families are spending more than 50% of their income on housing. The County Health Rankings and Roadmap states that there is a strong and growing evidence-based link between stable and affordable housing and health, as you've all seen, of course, with the pandemic. And housing costs have outpaced local income, so households not only struggle to acquire and maintain adequate shelter, but also face difficult trade-offs in meeting basic other needs. And of course, we've seen through a lot of your work that housing is often the most critical barrier for people seeking recovery, reentry, and overall stability. Now, when it comes to access to care, Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville house some of the most resources in the region. The 2022 Map to Health report stated that compared to the rest of the Blue Ridge Health District, it's 9 times easier to find a primary care provider, 6 times easier to find a mental health provider, and 18 times easier to find a pediatrician if you live in those areas. And at the same time, we know that not everyone in this area accesses those resources the same, and there are significant constraints on systems of care. For example, mental health providers in this region are incredibly resource constrained in efforts to meet the ever-growing needs for care. Charlottesville. In the city of Charlottesville, the average household income is second lowest in the region, following Buckingham County, and we do see high levels of income inequality. The highest earning households earn 7 times more than the lowest earning households. And in this, it's important to keep in mind the particular demographics in Charlottesville. The average age is 32, making it the youngest locality in the region, and also holds a significant student population. But it shows us the vastly different ways that people experience living in Charlottesville. And when we examine this by race, it becomes even more different. In Charlottesville, income of white households is approximately twice that of American Indian, Black African American, and Asian households, respectively. So coupled with high levels of income inequality, Charlottesville also has the greatest number of households that do spend over half their income on housing. And there's a particular inflection point when we look at Black households. Charlottesville is home to the largest Black population in the region, and they also have the lowest home ownership rate. So as we can see, on average, it's about half the rate than other counties of Black households in our region. So to put this in perspective, the average property value for an owner-occupied home in Charlottesville is $355,800, and the median household income for Black households is $38,600. Now, while Charlottesville has some of the greatest access to healthcare resources when comparing the other localities, it is the lowest in adequate food resources, along with Buckingham and Nelson. So the county health rankings and roadmap states that lacking consistent access to food is related to negative health outcomes such as weight gain and premature mortality. In addition to asking about having constant food supply in the past year, this measure also addresses the ability of individuals and families to provide balanced meals, including fruits and vegetables. Fluvanna. Fluvanna County has the second highest household incomes, followed by Orange and Greene counties, and it also has the lowest percentage of populations in poverty. Further, Fluvanna has the least amount of households experiencing severe housing cost burdens, and 86% of the population are homeowners, which is the highest homeownership rate in the region. And this is significant because the housing cost of those who own their homes free and clear with no mortgage decreases significantly from those who have a mortgage and who rent. So for example, in Fluvanna, the average monthly housing costs for owners with a mortgage is $1,580, and for owners without a mortgage, it's only $543. And for renters, the average housing cost is $1,188. And when we look at overall health in Fluvanna, people who live in Fluvanna County have the third highest life expectancy rate and fall in the middle to high range when it comes to access to food and health resources. However, when we examine the ratio of the population who has access to a dentist, Fluvanna is on the lower end, following Greene County. And this is important. For example, the foundation has worked with grant partners that identified significant visits to the emergency room due to problems that could have been prevented by regular dental care. Greene. Greene County has the lowest rate of income inequality when examining the highest and lowest earning households. This is also the case when examining income by race. We see the smallest difference in household income, so less than $10,000 between households of different races, while other localities that have higher inequality rates have differences as high as $20,000, $30,000, or even $40,000 plus dollars between households that have different demographics. And one pattern that is in common with all of these is that Indigenous, Black, and Hispanic households are typically on the lower end of that spectrum of inequity. So it's also interesting to explore the Black home ownership rate in Greene County, as it is the highest among the localities, according to the Black Progress Index. However, it is also important to note that Greene has the smallest Black population and also just in general has one of the highest rates of home ownership overall. So we see a pattern among Greene and Fluvanna with having higher household incomes, lower household inequalities overall, and also lower inequality or inequity when it comes to household income by race. And when examining access to health care, Greene County has the lowest access to primary care physician, following Louisa. So that's one physician to every 5,030 people, which is an important area for exploration in the rural regions, especially when we examine Louisa, Greene, Buckingham, and Fluvanna when it comes to access to care. And the County Health Rankings and Roadmap report states that access to care requires not only financial coverage, but also access to providers. And while high rates of specialist physicians have been shown to be associated with higher utilization, sufficient availability of a primary care physician is essential for preventative and primary care. Louisa. When examining household incomes in Louisa County, a particular inflection point is that this county does have the highest Asian and Black household incomes, following Greene and Fluvanna counties. Louisa also has the fourth lowest income inequality rate overall. And similar to other localities with low income inequality, Louisa also has lower instances of households who are experiencing severe housing cost burdens. More people are owning their homes. And one other facet of the physical environment for those who live in Louisa is that there are higher instances of workers who have longer commutes with more than 30 minutes, which reflects some of the transportation and environmental conditions of what it's like to live in Louisa. And I'll leave you with this for that. The County Health Rankings and Roadmap says that longer commuting distances and vehicles have been associated with an increase in blood pressure and body mass index and a decrease in physical activity as well. So when examining access to care in Louisa, people living in Louisa have lower access to primary care physicians and mental health providers. And we compare this picture to Charlottesville. It demonstrates how differently folks are experiencing access to care from one locality to another. And it also paints a picture of how people are living and accessing systems across our rural counties. Orange. Orange County has some of the highest overall household incomes in the region. However, when we examine rates of poverty, we see that Orange has the third highest percentage of children living below poverty in our region, followed by Charlottesville and Buckingham County. And similar to Louisa, Greene, and Fluvanna, Orange County has lower instances of households experiencing severe housing cost burdens and higher rates of people owning their home. And Orange also has a relatively high percentage of workers with long commute times, along with Nelson County. And when it comes to accessing healthy foods, Orange County has the highest population with limited access to healthy foods. So that means the percentage of the population who are low income and do not live close to a grocery store. And on the other end of that spectrum is Louisa and Nelson, where we see some of the greatest access to healthy foods. And the county health rankings and roadmap states that there is a strong evidence that residing in a food desert can be correlated with high prevalence of things like obesity and premature deaths. Nelson. The average household income is the second lowest in the region, following Charlottesville. And when we examine adults who are living below poverty, Nelson County is also the second in the region, following Charlottesville. It also follows Buckingham and Charlottesville for highest income inequality overall. So Nelson, Charlottesville, and Buckingham have similar characteristics when it comes to households experiencing high income inequality, higher levels of poverty, and lower household incomes overall. And likewise, Nelson also has higher levels of households experiencing severe housing cost burden that follows that same pattern. One inflection point to note that Black home ownership rate in Nelson County is the second highest in the region, following Greene. Nelson is the third highest in the region when it comes to accessing mental health providers, and Louisa and Nelson have the greatest access to healthy food resources, as mentioned. And this brings us to our last county of Buckingham. Buckingham County has the highest percentage of older adults over the age of 65 who also live alone, while also having the highest percentage of older adults who are living below poverty. So again, there's a similar pattern with Buckingham that follows Nelson and Charlottesville, where we find communities that have lower household incomes, coupled with higher income inequalities that also have higher percentages of people who are living below poverty. Likewise, housing characteristics follow the same trend, with Buckingham being the second highest in the region of households spending over half their income on housing. Also, those experiencing severe housing problems, which moves beyond financial constraints to also include overcrowding, lack of kitchen facilities, or lack of plumbing facilities. However, we see that the Black home ownership rate is fourth highest in the region in Buckingham. And overall, we see that Black home ownership is higher in the rural counties when compared with Charlottesville and Albemarle. And finally, one particular inflection point in Buckingham when it comes to access to care is access to exercise opportunities. Only 8% live near a park or a recreation facility. And on the other end of the spectrum, when examining preventable hospital stays, it is fourth lowest in the region. So this final slide is the hourly wage required for an adult and 2 children to be able to live sufficiently across the region, county by county. Now, there is no universally accepted method for calculating a living wage, and many researchers and organizations calculate their own version with varying data sources and various definitions of a basic needs budget. And many state that these income levels are still not enough to live off of in reality. So while this measure is limited and imperfect, it is telling that, generally speaking, the average household is not earning a living wage across the region. And this becomes particularly exacerbated when we examine Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic households in our region. So as we've seen, each county is different, and each demographic population is different among those localities. And while we can begin to map some patterns, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to this work. So you might be thinking, given all of this and all these different data points, what is the point? What's the solution? There has to be a continuation of this conversation in community, centering those most proximate. The American Evaluation Association reminds us that the definition of the problem is not as straightforward as it seems. And evaluator K.E. Kirkhart said that we have to pay particular attention to how social problems are defined and by whom. Problem definition also relates to how power is distributed. So this is a conversation piece, one piece of the puzzle and a tool to help guide decision-making. There is no one-size-fits-all approach for our region. But one thing for sure is that the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation stands in solidarity with the entire region and is unwavering in creating more equitable ways to directly invest resources in Black and Brown communities and those that intersect the various ways of identity who are most proximate to the issues that they say are most pressing in their communities. And with that, I will turn things over to Ebony Bugg. Thank you all for your time.
Let's give another round of applause for Ayanna, please. Just a quick housekeeping measure. If someone finds a cell phone, it may be mine. I'm really happy to be up here with you all today. It's been a long time. I see lots of familiar faces in the room. We don't have a planned break in our schedule, but you guys just received a lot of information about our region that I'm sure you're processing and trying to figure out how we're going to put those together. But before I begin, I just invite you guys to take a deep breath or even stand up and stretch for just a hot second. I'll set my timer. I'll give you a minute. Okay. We are about to get to the good stuff. Oh, that was nice. Yes. Sure. There was a question in a room. I'll wait. Oh, thank you. There is a question in a room about the slides. This is being recorded, but we will also send you the slides. So don't worry about taking pictures or tons of notes. All right, y'all, that's my timer. Back to your seats, everyone. Thank you. All right, so I have the pleasure of talking a little bit about our grant making, which from your registration questions, I think you guys are all interested in hearing about. First things first, most of you should have on your chairs a document, a chart that outlines all of the funding opportunities for 2023, 2024, offered by the Community Foundation. This chart is also available on our website. And again, these slides will be sent out to all participants. One of the first things I'd like to do is kind of do a little bit of myth busting. I know that we've talked about our discretionary grants programs redesign. We haven't seen you all in a long time, but I really want to ensure that you guys have an understanding of the things that we continue to be committed to at the Community Foundation. So first and foremost, one of the questions that we get all the time is, do we fund general operations? And the answer to that is yes. Generally speaking, anywhere from 65 to 70% of most of the grants that are going out of the door are for general operating purposes. As you saw in Ayana's presentation, we have a varied, nuanced, and eclectic region that we're trying to serve. And we have a strong desire to ensure that our resources are spread throughout the region and targeted efforts in our rural communities. We also continue to support a wide array of impact areas. And so we encourage folks from all sectors to apply, and we're often asked, do we support arts and culture? And we do so throughout our region, both from our discretionary and donor-advised grant making. As you've been hearing, we have a strong commitment to being an equity forward and community-centered institution, and that means centering the voices of those who are most proximate, both in our decision-making internally, our grant-making decision-making, and how our programs are designed. We also encourage partners to reach out to the Community Foundation to discuss your proposals. Our goal is to put the best proposals in front of the decision makers regarding their funding. We are not designing our programs or application processes to trip people up or weed people out. We really want to solve the intractable problems that are facing our region that's been demonstrated by the data that you guys have seen. So we highly encourage you all to reach out to staff, use our team in order to help us learn about the work that you're doing, vet your proposals, and understand the priorities of the grant programs that you're applying to. Another priority for us as we're moving forward is thinking about how to use the data that we've just received in our decision making. We're learning more and more about our region and how things are different. But not just the deficits, really, the strengths. So thinking back to the slide where green, where we can demonstrate that correlation between low income inequality and high homeownership rates. And so we also want to know what's working. And then we also are thinking about how we can deploy catalytic capital into the community. And we're hearing from our partners that working capital is a huge need, low debt services, things like that, that we haven't had available in the past, but are exploring. And finally, having a secure but accessible system for applying for our grants that increases accessibility and lowers burden on you all in the application process are top of the list for us. And so some of you have already engaged with Foundant and have been able to apply for grants in a way that is a little bit more user-friendly, not just for you all, but the folks who are reviewing as well. So these are the things that are driving the work as we think about funding opportunities and priorities at the Community Foundation. One other thing that is really important to us is capacity building. And these are efforts that the foundation is trying to make, investments in our partners that help boost your infrastructure and capacity for providing good programs and services out in the community. And we're taking a really holistic view of what this means. And this is in direct response to surveys, site visits, focus groups, formal and informal conversations with folks like you all. You have been asking, beyond our grant making, how can the Community Foundation use all of its resources, tools, reputation, capacity in order to support your work? We have a new position, and we're expanding our team, and we're currently recruiting for a senior capacity building program manager that will be leading and guiding this work, serving as an advisor, connecting folks to the CACF platform, but also helping organizations think about their long-term sustainability through our agency fund offerings. So consultation, collaboration, and sustainability are going to be the key pillars of our capacity building programmatic efforts. So next, I want to introduce us to some of the thinking behind the changes that we are making to our discretionary grant-making programs. As most of you or many of you know, last year we sunsetted our legacy programs, including Enriching Communities, Strengthening Systems, and Shaping Futures, which are terms that may be near and dear to many of your hearts. But we sunsetted those programs to make way for a redesigned process where we took all of these things into consideration. I just wanted to share with you the guiding principles to that work. And so we started off with a basic understanding that we are interconnected and interdependent. And if we didn't learn that over the past 3 years, I don't know what else is going to teach us that. As a whole, we believe in solidarity over charity. We seek to do with and not for or to communities. We also believe that there are clearly exclusionary systems in place that make it challenging for all of us throughout our region to belong, thrive, participate. And that in order to solve these problems, we also have to take a two-pronged approach of not doing harm as well as advancing solutions. And the solutions that we advance have to be community-led and driven. Finally, one of the biggest learnings and guiding principles of this work is that we truly do our best work when we listen well. And I think that that has been the hallmark of the past couple of years. Many of you met Ayanna and possibly Megan over the last years. They conducted almost 100 site visits throughout our entire region to listen to what you all need, what we can do better. And finally, we believe that grant funding should be targeted, accessible, and meaningful. And by meaningful, what we mean is that grant awards should be right-sized to the effort put into applying for them and to the issue that we're trying to solve. So with that, I'm going to introduce Justin Reed, who's going to share the two new discretionary grant-making programs on our slate. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Good morning, everybody. Before I share a little bit more about two of our newest grant programs, I first wanted to introduce you to our Community Advisory Committee. So many of you may be aware, but we did our first ever open call for grant reviewers. And this is part of our mission and our vision of grant making that is more participatory. And so we received hundreds and hundreds of applications, and actually we're still filling this committee. So if you're from Greene County or if you're from Louisa County, we're on our way. We're working on filling those seats. There were a few things that we really wanted to focus on as we built out this committee. We looked at proximity to issues. We looked at the connections across the community that our individual committee members have. And we also wanted to ensure regional representation. And the work of this committee is multifaceted. So they're helping to establish the policies around our grant making. They are ensuring that our grant making is done equitably. And they're also helping to make recommendations, right? This group is making recommendations to our board for grant approval. And so I do want to acknowledge several of our members who are here today. And so if you are serving on our Community Advisory Committee, please stand and wave your hands so folks can see who you are. Thank you. So we mentioned that we have a couple of new programs that we're adding to our roster of grant programs. The first that I wanted to introduce you all to, and you can find more information on our website. You can also find information on the handouts that we shared, but our new program called Solidarity. And the focus of Solidarity is really building off the work that Ayanna has shared and done, the values and principles that Ebony just shared. We want to ensure that the folks that are leading the change are those who are most knowledgeable of the issues that are happening on the ground. And so Solidarity grants will be focused on racial equity movement building. And I'll go to the next slide here because there are a few things I want to pull out. When we talk about racial equity movement building, we understand that throughout our history, the greatest change has come from those who are most impacted by injustice and inequity, leading the charge, who are helping to define the solutions. And we want to foster that here in our community as well. We want to ensure that diverse coalitions are led by folks who are on the front lines of the issues that are being addressed. We want to make sure that there's a strong pipeline of leaders that are being developed. One of the important aspects of this work can involve media campaigns and advocacy campaigns. It's multifaceted when it comes to whatever approach that's being put before us. We want to ensure that power is being built and shared, and so again, really centering those who are most impacted by whatever racial inequity is being addressed. And we want to ensure that the focus of the work is on long-term change. And so there are many opportunities to apply to the foundation for kind of quick response and quick relief efforts. When we talk about solidarity and racial equity, we're trying to move the needle toward a lasting change. And so this is something that we really want to emphasize as you consider our proposals related to solidarity. The other new program that I wanted to introduce to you all today is our Sudden and Urgent Needs Grant Program. And this grant program really emerged out of a lot of the work that was done during the pandemic. We were in this moment of community crisis, and we were able to mobilize significant resources. And we hope that we'll never see anything like that again. But we also know that from time to time there are emergencies in our community, and we want to be able to respond quickly. And so this is an opportunity to receive additional funding support when those emergencies arise. And so I think one of the important things, if you can see here at the bottom of the screen, when we're talking about a sudden and urgent need, we're talking about something that is time-bound, something that requires immediate attention or action, and it is in response to a critical situation. And so again, thinking about our previous grant making, I think a lot of you are familiar with the Community Emergency Response Fund. This stems from that, but this is an opportunity for us to continue to address issues as they arise, as organizations are confronted by unexpected challenges. And this is something that we hope organizations and groups will take advantage of when those situations emerge. And the last thing I want to emphasize here is the criteria. The criteria for both SUN and Solidarity are the same. We're looking at program alignment, and so if you go to our website, you'll see the guidelines for both of these new programs. Do the proposals align with the guidelines that have been shared for each of these programs? What is the impact that is being felt, whether that's an immediate impact through a program like SUN, or it's a longer-term impact through Solidarity? Capacity, looking at who's around the table, who's involved, what skills, backgrounds do they bring to the work in order to foster this change or this redress. Power building and sharing, as I mentioned earlier, ensuring that those who are most impacted by whatever inequity or issue is being addressed is at the forefront of leading the change and responding to that crisis or situation. And then care for resources, which is simply financial stewardship. We want to ensure that whatever proposal is being submitted, the budget that's associated with that proposal actually makes sense for what's being asked of the foundation. So now I'm going to turn the podium over to my colleague, Alex Gross, who is going to talk about a few more initiatives here at the foundation.
Thanks, Justin. Good morning, everyone. I am thrilled to be able to speak to our new impact investing program, which we are calling Investing for Local Impact. Our goal through this program is to create investments that level the playing field and rebalance power and opportunity in Central Virginia, particularly as it relates to our equity commitments. Impact investments will be made across our entire geographic footprint, but will intentionally be directed to areas who are struggling with disinvestment. And the key principle of this program is to seek investment opportunities that not only achieve measurable community impact, but also some financial return back to the foundation. We learned from the Premier Circle project and the collaboration to end homelessness that there are special financing needs that our nonprofit partners are in need of, but that traditional financial institutions cannot always serve. And similarly, grants alone are not the solution to all of our community's problems. These learnings have led us to participate in a year-long learning cohort hosted by Locus Impact Investing, along with other community foundations from across the nation who are building out their own programs. As a part of this cohort work, we have representatives from our governing board and both our finance and community advisory committees helping to shape these impact investing policies and the program. We have already had several requests for investments, such as redeveloping a community center and continuing efforts to expand low-income housing just within the last year. And while the guidelines for this program are in development, we hope to continue to hear about the community needs for investments, as these requests really do help us to shape the program. So please feel free to reach out to either myself or Ebony if you have any questions or ideas about what future impact investments might look like. As a reminder, this is a program that is still in development, so it is not on your sheet of paper and not yet on the website, but something that we are very excited to launch in 2024. I'd now like to welcome Shakita Venable, our Donations Relations Manager, to discuss opportunities to connect with our donor-advised resources.
Good afternoon, or good morning still. So I am here to share the trends of the Donor Advised Grant Making Program. And so over the last, I'll say year, we have seen an increase in our grant applications, and it's growing at a rapid pace. One of the rounds that we had closed just in September was a record number of applications. And so that is making our grant rounds more competitive. So with that, we wanted to share some of the things that the committee is looking for when it comes to making your grant application the next level. And so it's pertinent and it is very important to have those meaningful relationships. And when we speak to relationships, it's that you are partnering with people that are the most proximate to the areas that you are trying to impact, as well as having innovative projects and programs, and that ties directly back to the partnerships, and that it is okay for two different organizations to apply for a grant if you are partnering to do a project and you are doing different aspects of that project, because then that project will have a bigger impact on our community and those that truly need the services that you are providing. And so when we speak to, in a lot of our applications, they ask for those letters of support. In the committees, when we are reviewing applications and either doing site visits, you are sharing those partnerships, and those letters of support are also very important when you think about just someone that speaks to the work that you are doing in the community and that partnership that you are working to make. And so those are, I think, the key things when it comes to our grant applications. As Ebony stated at the beginning, we are here to help you have the best application that we can present to our donors or the committee. And so the donor relations team, as well as the grants team, we are definitely here to talk with you about your proposals. I tend to schedule sessions before they close with anyone that wants to share their proposal or any ideas they may have. So please feel free to reach out to our team if you need support with your grant application. So next, I'm going to speak to, on that form, you have a new grant program that we just launched in August, and I won't go through the details of the grant, but I do want to share the history of the grant because it's very important as to how we gained this grant. And so the PB&J Fund started in 2009 through a private fund, and they had their own LLC as well. And it was to empower children and families through nutritional education and the food insecurity space. And so through the pandemic, we learned that through some strategic planning of the PB&J Fund, that they were uniquely positioned to use their financial resources to support organizations' work with food access in hopes to expand and deepen their work. So with that, they formed a partnership with the foundation. In this partnership, we had an open call for committee members, or they had an open call for committee members that had deep knowledge of the food justice insecurities and were selected after that to sit on the advisory committee, and they actually helped us come up with the process, the grant application, to ensure that we were doing what was to ensure that we were basically supporting the food insecurities in our community. And so the mission of the PB&J Fund is, again, to empower children and families through culinary and nutritional education and help improve access to affordable, healthy foods for all community members. And that grant application is currently open. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. And we do also have one of our team members, Alex Gross, that was from the PB&J Fund, that is leading the committee for us. And so my final slide is going to be around, I think the biggest question we get a lot is how to connect with our fund holders. And so we have 3 different ways that you can connect with our fund holders. One is a Giving Opportunities newsletter that we send out quarterly. This is not on our site, but we will share this information. In this newsletter, the requests will come directly to me at my email, but this newsletter is a way to connect with fund holders. It goes out with our statements. This is a first come, first served newsletter, and it's usually about 2 pages each round. And so what that means is if you don't make the round that you originally submit for, it will go to the next round. It usually the deadline is usually the last day of the month before our quarterly statements are published, but this is a way to share any initiatives you have outside of a grant round or a fundraising opportunity with our donors. And then our donors will either reach out to you directly or to myself or someone on the donor team on how to connect with you and give if they see fit. Another way is if you applied for BAMA this round, you saw it actually on the application, but we do share grant application with donors if they ask. So when they're doing their giving and they want to know any new applicants, any new organizations that's in an impact area that they are is a priority for them, then we share those organizations and those initiatives with the donors. The final way is going to be through philanthropic matchmaking, and that's usually done with the one-on-one connection with the relationship manager of the donor. And How that works is it's kind of like there's two different ways. One is kind of like the grant application sharing when they ask at their end of year giving of new organizations, we share them with them. And the other way is if we know of an organization that has an initiative and it's in one of their impact areas, we will share those initiatives with them off grant cycle, and if they're interested, then they will give. So with that being said, I will turn it back over to Ebony, who will lead our Q&A session.
Thanks, Shakita. I just want to reinforce that we are quite committed to ensuring that your proposals are funded in full and do a lot of philanthropic matchmaking and sharing of your applications. And that leads me to, I have a couple of FAQs that came in from your registration, questions that get asked of us quite frequently. And then we're going to open the floor up for questions from the audience. So to go back to what Shakita was mentioning earlier, one of the biggest questions that we get is what is the difference between our discretionary grants and donor advised grants? And so I'm going to give you the long answer. This chart, which is available on our website in the impact section from our last impact report, is a graphic that shows how money is flowing into and out of the community foundation. I don't think I have a little circle thingy here, but I'm going to direct your attention to what I really want you to pay attention to on this slide is the proportion of the sizes of these buckets. So discretionary resources are the resources at the community foundation that our board, team, and committees has discretion over where it goes. Donor advised grant making is at the discretion of the donor. That nice big old orange box is donor advised funds. That's where the overwhelming majority of resources going out into the community from the community foundation are coming from. That cute little green square right next to it is where our discretionary resources come from. And so that slide that Shakita just showed you beforehand is incredibly important in terms of how we access and deploy a greater number of resources out into the community versus the more limited resources from our discretionary pool. Does that feel like that? Did we get that? Awesome. Okay. Fiscal sponsorship. This has come up quite a bit. So first and foremost, the foundation by law can only grant to 501c3 nonprofit, governmental, and religious entities. However, if you are not one of those groups, you can be fiscally sponsored by one of those groups. It's almost like them lending you their infrastructure in order to support your work. We wholeheartedly accept and encourage fiscally sponsored projects and organizations to apply for grants at the Community Foundation. We find that not always individuals or groups need to take on the nonprofit infrastructure in order to do good work in our community. Those organizations and those applications are not viewed any differently than any other application received from the Community Foundation. 2 points of note. In any grant round for any grant program, the fiscal sponsor can submit one application for themselves, but may be listed as the fiscal sponsor on as many applications as are prudent for their institution. Secondly, if you are a fiscally sponsored organization, All of the questions on the application should be answered from the perspective of your work. The only thing that we ask about your fiscal sponsor is their tax information and their contact information. All of the content should be from your application. Okay? All right. So you have heard a lot of racial terminology on the stage tonight. Some contradictory, or today, some contradictory even. And that's because we know that this is a very nuanced, complex, and ever-evolving concept. But you will see, particularly on our discretionary grant-making documents, guidelines, applications, et cetera, Black and Alana. And Alana is an acronym for African, Latin, Asian, Arab, Native American. And we're using this right now because we have found that BIPOC or POC or people of color can oftentimes conflate what is a very nuanced experience of identity. But I also just want to say, first and foremost, we follow your lead, and we are not identifying you for you. You can name and state how you want to be identified to the Community Foundation, and we encourage that self-identification. Jump the gun. So I'm going to pause there to see, one, if there's any questions about any of these slides, but just any questions at all for us about some of the programming. We shared a lot of important information, some new programs and directions that the Community Foundation are taking, and we really want to hear from you. So there are microphones that are going to be circulating. I ask that you stand. Please do use the microphone, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, that would be great. And don't be shy.
I have one of them, so just let me know.
Me too. Hi, I'm Anjali Shah with Charlottesville Tomorrow, so naturally I will ask a question. I'd love to know a little bit more about the impact the Community Advisory Committee has had on all these changes to the foundation that you've mentioned.
Absolutely. So the idea about reimagining our grant-making processes has been in the works for quite some time. Our current our Community Advisory Committee was once called the Grants Portfolio Committee, and we have several members, legacy members of that group here. And so some of the initial work started pre-pandemic as we were conducting several rounds of feedback from the community. And so some of you may have participated in a round of focus groups in early 2020. Many of you have participated in our survey, our Center for Effective Philanthropy grantee survey. All of those things got us to thinking that we wanted to shift our grant making quite a bit. And so I think you guys are most familiar with our Emerging Communities Grant Program, which is very similar to BAMA, in which folks receive maybe up to $15,000 in annual grant, et cetera. And so the first things that we started thinking about from the committee's perspective was, is this impactful and does this really work for folks? And what we were finding is that many of the requests were really capacity building requests that could be met with other resources. And what folks were really looking for was deep investment for impact rather than wide and shallow. And so that was the first round of conversations. It became really clear to us through programs like our HEAL Fund, the Community Emergency Response Fund, particularly the household distribution of resources during the pandemic that was so low barrier, but also yielded significant feedback about like what people were truly struggling with and how this was disproportionately impacting different folks in our community. And so as the Community Foundation has been working with consultants and our board and staff and team have been evolving our equity journey, we then said that we needed to actually change the charge of our committee and how we're deploying these resources to actually reflect both the grant-making needs of the community as well as our values related to equity and community-centeredness. And so we paused in the redesign work to actually first redesign who was making these decisions at all. And that's how we grew the Community Advisory Committee. And then over the past year, we've been working with that committee in order to develop the policies that you are now seeing and the concept of the Solidarity Grant Program. And so we are truly committed to these decisions being community-led and community-driven, and that's the way that they have been involved in that process. And from a technical standpoint, that Community Advisory Committee is the decision maker when it comes to our discretionary grant making, and then they pass those decisions on to our board for final approval. Hope that answers your question. It's good to see you, Angeli. One more.
Why, hello, Amel.
Good morning. My name is Amel Gorani, and I'm with the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. First, congratulations. This is really inspiring work, and so nice to see the new strategy and grant update. I just want to ask about the convening aspect, and the movement building, which is so hugely important. What are you looking to do under this convening? Much of the work is done in NGO fashion, nonprofit fashion, as, separate, isolated, project-based organizations, or even for the entire organizations. But, that coalition building, movement building, and if I can just tag another question onto that, there is so much, that is happening in the philanthropic space, so much reimagination. Sorry, I feel this echo, but hopefully you can hear me fine. There is so much happening in Virginia, nationally, globally. If there are partnerships, spaces that you are, tapping into or helping organizations here in Virginia connect with, it would be great to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Amel. I just want to make sure I'm answering your question. So the first is, how are we envisioning our role as a convener in the community? Well, hey, y'all. We're starting today. I think it's manifold. I think that I just also want to say we are a fairly lean nonprofit organization in Charlottesville, Virginia, too. So we can't be all things to all people at all times. But I think that I'll lean into a little bit of the art of it rather than the science of it. So I don't have an event schedule or specific strategic bullet points, but I can talk anecdotally about what it's felt like when we are in the room and when we have created a container. And so I think about the work that we did with the Premier Circle project during the pandemic that in some ways led us to deploy a significant amount of resources in a very short period of time in order to provide shelter to our most vulnerable community members during the pandemic, which will also then lead to long-term permanent supportive housing and addressing some of the issues that we were talking about today. But that really started with a convening on one that we were invited to and one that we held as well. And that convening happened years ago. But being in that space and being an equal partner in that space, a listening partner in that space, is what allowed for transformation to happen later. And so I can't speak to all of the things that we plan to convene. I can only really speak to the ethos behind it right now, which is that. That is how we believe transformation and true lasting impact in our community can happen. And so I definitely see us, like the twin to that convening is as a catalyst. Specifically, we do plan to host a number of gatherings throughout the next year or so. We are convening a retreat to support rest and recovery for many of our Black and Brown nonprofit leaders and community leaders. We are going to host a lunch and learn so that you guys can take deep dives into these programs and what it means to apply to them. We are participating in events with other funders within our region and network. We are hoping to engage our fund holders in a robust donor education opportunity, and we are really trying to make ourselves available for a lot of the coalition work that's happening in the community. And I think that we're priding ourselves of being sort of trying to be in the right place at the right time so that we can bring all of our resources to bear on some of the rapidly changing landscape that we find ourselves in that oftentimes requires very quick and nimble decision making. So I'll say stay tuned, but that's the energy behind what it is that we're thinking about as it comes down to convening. And can you repeat your second question, Emel? Is there? Yes, absolutely. Thanks. So one thing that I will say for the Solidarity Grant Program in particular, and I can really speak to their discretionary grant making side, what we learned specifically from Shaping Futures and Strengthening Systems is really the power of our sort of centrality in the community. And we have what's called a design process, and you can learn more about that on our website. But when we get proposals, we often recognize that the work can be strengthened or improved, or impact can be exponentially greater if coalitions are built. And we absolutely see ourselves at the focal point of that work in bringing folks together. And so we do have, in the process for our grant making, rather than saying, no, we're not going to fund this, we think more people need to be brought to the table, we have a pathway towards design where we will serve as that convener and facilitator, bringing folks together. What I just described connotes a more passive process towards that. But I do also just want to note that we do believe, like the data that we are seeing and the more that we're learning about our community means that we need to take a more targeted approach in terms of our grant making. So it's not just come to the foundation. We, as well as our community advisory committee, are looking, right? We're actively seeking, we're actively thinking about opportunities to convene. And so I think there are a number of folks around the table right now that have come to us with an idea, and we can say, yes, we think there's a there. Let's bring everybody to the table. And I can look around the room and see that, we already have these things scheduled and are going on. And so I just do want it to be clear that, like, by the time that we get a grant application on the table, our hope is that that work has been done. Right? That we are out there, that the majority of our actual programmatic work is not reviewing an application, but connecting with you guys out in the community, being a part of these meetings and groups so that, the application is just a formality at that point in time, not a foregone conclusion, let me be clear. But what I mean is that the work has been done, and then it's just putting it on the paper, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Emel? Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Christy Steele Garcia. I'm with the American Heart Association. Just want to say this is a great event, so thank you so much for having us. My question is really around when you're in the room with some of your funders or you're looking at grant applications, You know, there's a lot of talk philanthropically, both on the foundation side and corporate side, on adjustments of our pillars of giving and what kind of impact can this XYZ nonprofit illustrate. You know, some organizations have a lot of controls in place that help collect that data, and some really struggle to show that impact. How are you, as a foundation with your funders, leading that conversation around maybe a smaller organization that's doing a lot of good work but doesn't have the data yet? And how are you encouraging the funders to maybe increase their gift to help with that data collection?
That's a fantastic question. I'm going to try to answer all the pieces. So one of the things that I've been working on since I've been at the Community Foundation has been in shifting the way that we think about impact on a variety of levels. So oftentimes we're thinking about impact on the sort of, I'm gonna use this term lightly, beneficiary level, like this person got better. But I am really trying to expand the way that we are thinking and the way that we're talking to our fund holders and other donors about impact in a lot of different ways. So for example, the capacity building of an important but maybe small organization is an intervention in and of itself and a measurement of impact. The good delivery then of those services is another level, and then that benefit to the, sort of the individual, the community is a whole other level. And so in order to get that good thing, we have to, build capacity internally. And so that is the focal point of our capacity building program, but also something that we, share with our fund holder community as we're thinking about things. So each organization represented in this room exists at a very different stage in the life cycle of a nonprofit entity. And so we're not asking a new organization to do a big, old and big organizations work. And so the main thing that I think folks can do is to highlight particularly where they are, what they can accomplish with the resources they have available to them. And on the flip side, what we're really asking applicants to do and what we're encouraging to do and taking a good look at ourselves is to not rush into that work. I actually really find that particularly small organizations out in the rural counties and particularly Black and Brown-led institutions are being asked within like a year of starting to produce impact that would be impossible with the resources that are afforded to them. And so the thing that you're bringing up is a really critical point in us normalizing what it means to grow, to build, to sustain for longer term impact. So that's one part of the question. The other piece is that we can't measure impact without good baseline data. And that's something that we are trying to get much better at doing and understanding so that we can help organizations talk about their impact in ways that are meaningful to donors, but also meaningful to the work, right? Things that make sense. And then I think the third way that I want to answer that is that impact is in the eye of the beholder too, right? How we're defining impact, how we're even defining data is really critical. And so I keep going back to, good definition of the problem and theory of change from the perspective of those who are most impacted by the thing that you're trying to solve. Creating that through line is going to be the most salient way towards demonstrating your impact, so to speak, in the community. It's not a slick application. It's not a graph. It is true and meaningful. If we believe, because the community said they need this thing and this is the way that they want it to be done, that something different can happen as a result of that. Does that answer your question? Someone, I really can't see anything.
I have a microphone. Oh, test, there we go. Hi, everyone, Daniel Fairley. I'm with a lot of things, but let's say 100 Black men. I have two questions about the Solidarity Grant. The first question, is that a donor advised fund or is that a CACF discretionary fund? And then the second one is with the committees, is that going to be through the kind of community, I'm hearing my voice twice, the community advisory committee, thank you, or is it going to be kind of another discretionary committee?
So the Community Advisory Committee advises on all of our discretionary grant making, Solidarity, and SUN. They set our budget for those programs each year, they design the policies, and they make the final decision on where those grants go to. So they will be making the decisions on Solidarity. Solidarity is one of our discretionary resources. Remember that cute green square. And each year, we take a portion of that fund, and then we make grants out for that. So this year, or when the grants open, folks can apply for both SUN and Solidarity, and that will be decided by that committee that's here. That being said, similar to what Shakita was saying earlier, if someone submits a proposal, for example, that exceeds the capacity of that fund to fund, then, and we believe that proposal has, merit, then we will absolutely try to reach out to our fund holder community to see if we can bring additional resources to bear to those projects. And that works for all of our grant programs. Did I get it? Okay. Terrell, sorry.
Hi, I'm Anna Pillow from the Art Center in Orange. We have been so incredibly supported by the many programs that y'all offer for organizations, especially looking at the rural counties. My question is kind of based on that idea of working in community and having strong partnerships that are mutually beneficial. And so the question is, are there ways that you're funding, like the organizations that you fund, can support the foundation back, not by stressing anybody's team, but by strengthening the network or sharing information in a specific way, anything that we can do as the ones who are really benefiting from these funds to give back and be stronger together?
Well, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking. I'm sure Brendan probably has some ideas about that and can chime in. One of the things that definitely comes to mind is that we're trying to tell the story of our community together. And it's definitely, it takes us being in community together to do that. And so I think that's one area for sure. Like, telling the story of our region to the world, I think, is something that we rely on our grant partners to do consistently. The other thing that comes to mind is feedback. We will probably be launching surveys. We want to hear from you. We really do take the things that you guys say into consideration as we're thinking about our programs. And we are a small team, and we have a very large geographic region to cover. And so the last thing that I'll say is that we really do want to understand how uniquely, how positioned and composed our individual localities are. And so we actually learn so much about our region from your grant applications, and it helps us really think about our programming, think about what the pressing issues are. And so I'd say, you might be called upon to do that. And so I really do hope that folks feel like they can be regional representatives and ambassadors in that way. Okay.
So my question, oh wow, I do hear my voice twice. Okay. My question is, as a young person, like, for organizations that may be led by young people, they don't always necessarily have the asset of like a grant writer within the organization. So can you speak to how the Solidarity and SUN grant programs applications are, I wouldn't say simplified, but more diverse and welcoming to new applicants who may have not gone through a daunting grant writing process before?
Thank you. You just made me think of something. So if Megan can hear me, let's make a note about some help language on that application. I think, I will just say that it's a work in progress, that we just adopted this new system, and I do believe that there are some features in the application that render it infinitely more accessible to folks, primarily in the sense that we accept applications that you have submitted to something else before in lieu of our application. If you're having any trouble with any aspect of the application, we will work with you to fill it out in our office. We have, if the internet is an issue even, we are deploying some like loaner computers and things like that so that people can come to our offices. We can do them together. You could dictate them to us. We really just want to get the information there. Folks can also submit a video in lieu of an application. Handwritten applications are a little bit challenging, but we could work with it. But the bigger question really is, how do we even get to our youth? And I feel like the biggest accessibility barrier is really communications. Like, you guys are here because you have a previous relationship, maybe somebody told you to come. I'm not exactly 100% sure how everyone found out, but I'm so glad that you're here. But one of the things that we're doing right now, Jamana has just joined our team, is that we've recognized that our capacity to do any of these things well depends on our ability to actually reach the people that we're trying to get there. So what we found in our open call, for example, for our community advisory committee, is that we didn't get anyone in the very few people in the 18 to 25 demographic. And so it's clear that we're not speaking to those folks, regardless of how accessible our application might be. And so those are things that we have to work to improve on. But it also is why we had that public call and how we went about selecting the new members of our community advisory committee. So there was geographic representation, there was proximity to the community and issues, but more so than that, every single person on this committee is a bridge and has extensive networks across geographies, across age ranges that can help us deploy our resources and efforts a little bit more efficiently. Any other questions? Okay, then. So I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts here. First, thank you. Thank you guys for being such an amazing, patient, attentive, warm, and lovely audience. It's really great to see you all in person. We have a few important dates to announce. So the Sun and Solidarity Grant Program guidelines and information, all of the application questions and criteria are currently listed on our website. The application itself will be available on October 2nd, and you can start applying then. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis, and decisions are made on a quarterly basis, so you can apply anytime. On the 2nd at noon, our entire programs team will be available via Zoom to answer any of your questions about any part of this application process. So no questions too big or too small, come one, come all. The Zoom link will be emailed to you. It'll also be posted on our website and in our newsletter. We have 2 grant rounds from our donor side. The PB&J Fund is currently open until next Friday, and the Prana Fund will open on October 27th. I really highly encourage you guys to sign up for our newsletter. That is how we primarily communicate with folks right now. You can take a moment to like us on socials. Jamana didn't even have to tell me. And most importantly, please share our current job postings with your networks. We have 2 open positions. One is a database and technology manager, and the second is that very important senior capacity building manager position. So with that, I will leave you all. Please feel free to have any additional refreshments. We have the space for another 10 minutes or so if you want to continue to connect with your peers and ask us any questions. Thanks.